Hey guys, welcome to a new video. Like, comment and subscribe if you enjoy. Without any further interruptions, enjoy the what if. CH13 Mom's red hair and conflicted feelings. H. His eyes widened when something or rather someone hit him full force, making both of them crash on the tree trunk, poor Naruto having to face the impact of their collision. The rift slowly started to decrease in size until it wasn't there. Holy shit, what the hell was that? Thought Naruto while grunting painfully as he saw everything return to normal, still oblivious to the fact that there was someone lying on him. His eyes widened when he heard an angelic voice, a voice he had come to know in the last couple of days. What hit me, Datbane? She groaned while holding her head. Naruto deactivated the rinnegan to look at her properly, and not her chakra. His eyes widened, his face pale white like had seen a ghost, while he tried to breathe deeply and slowly. Oh boy, okay. This is not real, this is not real, this is just my imagination. Ka-san is dead, remember, he thought while breathing deeply, his eyes closed hoping his imagination would just fade away when he opened his eyes. Slowly opening them, he saw one of the most beautiful violet eyes he could ever imagine, while the one who had fallen from out of nowhere was looking at him with wide eyes. Holy mother of Cage Bunshin, she's real, he thought as he tried to get up, but to no avail as the familiar women on his chest just didn't seem to want to get up, and only stare at his face. Getting uncomfortable by her stare, he got up forcefully while backing up against the trunk, an expression of horror on his face, sweat beads rolling down on his face while he breathed deeply, his ramen forgotten. Shoo. Get away. Fly away. Kai. The red-haired woman looked at him like he was crazy before she noticed his features, blonde hair, blue eyes and the familiar white trenchcoat. She narrowed her eyes before completely blurring out of Naruto's vision. He gagged on his own breath when she suddenly appeared in front of him before giving him a punch so hard that he was immediately on his knees, spitting up saliva while coughing. That was for sealing Ayumi-chan into my Naru-kun, you bastard, she yelled at him furiously while Naruto's eyes widened. What the hell is she talking about? Ka-san, how can you be alive? He thought while in pain before he was roughly pulled to his feet by her. Yet again, he nearly had a heart attack when he saw her eyes. Her sclera was red, one black tomo in each eye surrounding a slit-like small pupil, while he also noticed that her nails had lengthened just like his do whenever he uses Ayumi's chakra. Shish Sharingan. What the? Yuki. He was having a mental breakdown now. What was happening right now was making his mind go crazy. First his supposedly dead mother falls from midair, and then this, Sharingan. His mother, they were Uzumaki, weren't they? And it was just in the beginning stage. Could it be that she had just awakened it? So many questions his mind was bursting with right now. He was pulled out of his brainstorming questions when felt himself being shaken roughly. How could you do that to your son, you idiot? I hate you. Tears started welling up in her red eyes, which oddly matched quite nicely with her red hair. I told you that the life of a Jinchuriki is not easy. Ayumi-chan would have broken out of that genjutsu if given time, yet you had to pull that stunt. Now my Sochi, he would be hated by the village. And why are you crying now? Where's my little Naru-kun, Datbane? She said while tears streamed down her beautiful dirt-laced face as she continued to shake him furiously. Although Naruto himself couldn't understand a word she was saying right now, but he was just happy to see his mother while tears of happiness streamed down his face. Ka-san. He choked as more tears freely fell on the dusty ground while a huge smile took birth on his face. Her eyes widened, also letting go of him with trembled hands before she stuttered. What? Her eyes as wide as they could get as she gazed into his oceanic blue eyes while she shakily stepped back. His eyes, they're not Minato's. So warm, bright, innocent, and are shining with pure joy right now. Yet they contain, deep inside, so much pain, loneliness, sadness, she thought before realizing that he had called her Ka-san. But that wasn't possible. Surely this young man must be mistaken. She only had one child to whom she had just given birth to. But she couldn't help but feel a sort of a deep connection with him, like they were fated to meet this day. Naruto also noticed the conflicting emotions in her eyes, which had changed back to violet along with her nails lengthening down to normal. For the first time taking in her appearance, he noticed that she was in a hospital gown while her feet were bare. Her long red hair which were reaching down to her knees were flowing gently with the soft breeze, her skin milk creamy with no blemish whatsoever. He blushed heavily when he noticed her generous bust more noticeable in that gown. Turning to her heart-shaped face, his blush darkened when he made eye contact with her mesmerizing violet eyes, her slightly parted pink lips as if inviting him to take them. Upon looking closely, he saw she was panting a bit while her skin was sweaty and a bit dirty. Her knees were buckling under her weight as if she was using all of her remaining energy just to stay standstill. Who are you? She stuttered questioningly while Naruto could still feel pain from that punch. I can't believe that she could punch so hard in her weakened state. I guess she wasn't cage-level kunoichi for nothing, he thought, having a large smile on his face before replying. Are you Uzumaki Kushina? He said with a hopeful look in his eyes. He had to be absolutely sure about this while she nodded hesitantly. Well, it wasn't a big surprise to her if he knew her, seeing as she was famous across the elemental countries. His smile couldn't have been wider right then. It was that rare true smile he showed when he was truly happy, and right now he was feeling something which was beyond the limits of happiness of what a normal person could define. Kushina blushed at seeing him smile, which was practically radiating out like bright sunrays in the canopy of a forest. Right now, he didn't care if he was grinning like an idiot or that tears were freely falling even through his closed eyes. He just wanted to run and hug her, to never let her go. But he had to restrain himself right then from doing that, seeing as she could take it as an attack. He could see that she was on full alert right then in front of him. And although he didn't have any idea of how she landed here, what that rift or the bloodied claw was about, the fact that his mother was standing right in front of him made him forget all about that. He sniffed, chuckling to himself while wiping the tears which seemed to be flowing like an endless river from his eyes. I'm Uzumaki Naruto Datbeo. He stated proudly while stunned silence followed after his declaration. Kushina was at loss for words right now and was having trouble picking up her jaw. Did he mean to say that he was her baby boy? But babies don't grow that much in 1 hour or so, do they? Of course not. What the hell was she thinking? Noticing her surroundings for the first time after she had arrived dramatically, her eyes widened to that saucers when she saw that it was daytime while the forest around them was completely unharmed. What is happening here? This area was completely destroyed some minutes ago, and there were supposed to stars shining, not the sun, she thought before her eyes widened in realization when she remembered something Ayumi had told her in the past. She said that she had control over space and time. Could it be that, to save me and make me reunite with my son, that she sent me into the future? But I have to confirm it, she thought before speaking, breaking the silence between them, his intense gaze making her blush. Where are we? She said, making Naruto blink before he replied. This is the forest behind the Hokage monument of Konoha, he stated, dumbly wondering what was going on in her mind, also noticing that her eyes had widened a bit before they settled back to normal. I see. And can you tell me how many years has it been since Kyuubi attacked? She said, her tongue almost slipping out Kyuubi's name while Naruto again blinked in surprise, taken aback by her questions. What? Ka-san? What are you? He asked in confusion, still teary-eyed while he slowly approached her, whereas Kushina immediately jumped back to create more distance between them, a serious expression on her face, a face telling Naruto of years of experience and power beyond his comprehension. Naruto felt his heart being crushed at the sight of her drawing away from him, like he was some kind of monster. He hadn't expected that. You stay right where you are, young man. I don't know what's going on here, and I'm sure neither do you. You can't just say Ka-san and accept me to believe you like that. It could be one of those special transformation techniques which can fool even the cages. So it would be better if you just answer. She trailed as she was immediately on her knees due to weakness, while she started to pant heavily, a struggled expression on her face. Damn it, I used almost all of my chakra in holding the seal while I gave birth to Naru-kun. But for my Sochi's sake, I have to stay strong. This may be one of the enemy's tactics or that masked man's genjutsu, she thought, still wary of her surroundings as well as the young shinobi in front of her, which looked like a carbon copy of young Minato. Ignoring his pained heart, he rushed towards her to aid her before she pulled out a kunai from the sleeves of her loose gown, a serious expression on her face. Stay right where you are, don't come near me. One wrong move, and you'll be wiped from the face of this planet, she said with a glare while Naruto stopped frozen in the midst of his dash towards her. His expression that of unimaginable pain he was feeling right then, his mind only registering those 4 words, don't come near me. That statement making him remember all those villagers who shouted at him to just get away from their lives. Get away from me, demon. Why can't you just leave us? Don't come near me and my son, you got that? You're just a pathetic excuse for existence on the planet. His heart broke into 2 when he heard his own mother say those words to him. He knew she was being cautious. But so many years of hearing those statements pained him so much to hear that, especially from her. When he had told her that he was her son, his overjoyed heart had expected her to take him in her arms. His emotional part couldn't help but think that she too was pushing him away like the rest of the villagers. Slowly, again tears started to stream down his face, but this time they were not of happiness and excitement, rather they were of immense pain that a 13-year-old shouldn't even be able to imagine, let alone go through it. This time, the pain he was feeling was much intense than he had felt ever before. He could bear the beatings of those villagers, their glares, their ignorance towards his existence. He could even bear when Sakura hit him every time and straight out rejected him for dates in the past. He could bear the death of someone like Haku and Zabuza who helped in giving finishing touches to his way of the shinobi. But this was much painful than Orochimaru's most powerful attacks he had faced. It hurts. So much. Why, am my own Ka-san? He thought while clutching the left side of his chest, as he bit his bottom lip, his face down as he started to trudge backwards slowly ignoring the calls of Kushina. Meanwhile, it started to rain eventually like even the heavens were crying sympathetically for him. Naruto-kun, what's wrong? His eyes widened when he heard Ayumi's concerned voice suddenly come out of nowhere while she couldn't see Kushina as Naruto's face was facing the slowly becoming wet ground as the rain started to pour heavily. Why is he crying? Was it something I said? Thought Kushina as she strangely felt her heart clench at the sight of him crying and the pained expression on his face. Her feet automatically started taking her towards Naruto, both of them totally wet because of the heavy downpour, her weakness forgotten. Naruto-kun, tell me, what's wrong? Asked Ayumi frantically, her concerned voice reverberating through Naruto's pained form. She had just woke up when she heard his crying and the pained feeling she was feeling, as they were now connected after the work she had done. Ayumi-chan. You were wrong, my mother. She doesn't love me, he inwardly said as Ayumi's eyes widened. She now completely understood what was happening right now. She knew that soon Kushina would be arriving in this timeline considering that she still remembered that she had sent Kushina as a last resort to the future by opening a dimensional rift through midair. She knew that Kushina in her weakened state would be the target of that Warhawk Danzo and his organization route and would be an easy target. But she wanted to give Naruto this as a surprise for all the beatings and glares he had to suffer because of her. She could have told him in the forest, but it only would have diverted his mind then from the task. But considering that Kushina didn't know what had happened, she knew that the fiery Uzumaki would not trust Naruto right away. But damn, she should have thought of this scenario. Even though Kushina's cautiousness was normal to any other normal shinobi, her precautious actions could actually hurt Naruto in the worst way possible, and that is what was happening right now. Naruto, you have to understand that she too is confused about all of this, she's just being cautious, that's all. Tried to reason Ayumi, but Naruto's mind was too cloudy, just like the weather, to listen to anything. His behavior would have been frustrating and pitiful for any third person, but Ayumi had watched every second of his life and knew what he must be going through. All his life he deeply desired for a mother's love, and he was still 13 years old after all, so he would have expected his mother to just accept him without any cinch. This was way too emotional topic for him to let his mind think about it even for a second. If he would have thought this out like he was usually doing since the activation of rinnegan, he would have understood the situation and approached her calmly and patiently. However, seeing that he deeply cared for and admired his mother, it certainly would have crushed the young Jinchuriki's heart to see her behave like that with him. Are you alright? Naruto flinched when he heard that same soft voice mixed with the pitter-patter of raindrops. Kushina's eyes widened when she saw his pointed longer than normal nails, also feeling the same Yuki she was so familiar with. Can't be, is he really my baby? she thought as she looked closer at his face. His spiky hair now wet, resulting in more bangs covering his face. Her violet pupil zoomed out and shrunk in size due to her shock when she saw his more than normal defined whisker marks. Slowly tears of happiness started to form in her violet eyes before they streamed down her now wet face, her lips twitching upwards to slowly form a glowing smile. He's my Sochi. He's really my Naru-kun. So Ayumi-chan really did send me to the future. But oh my god, he's so handsome, she thought as a light blush adorned her rosy cheeks, while her hand slowly started to approach his face on its own. Just as she was about to call him, he suddenly dashed away from her as fast as he could, wanting to get away from that soft voice which he so desired to listen every day of his life. He didn't know where he was going, his eyes were closed as he tried desperately to hold back tears, failing miserably at it as a choked sob escaped from his throat every few seconds. He had promised himself a while ago that he wouldn't cry anymore, but this was too much to handle. His running steps began to become sluggish, his speed slowing down while his feet splashed water with every step he took. Suddenly tripping on his feet, his body splashed onto the water on the ground before he skidded sideways to a halt, his white trench coat now dirty and covered in mud. Uzumaki Naruto, control yourself. She loves you, you got me. She can't hate you. Not in a million years, yelled Ayumi inside his head while his choked sobs of emotional anguish became louder, filling the forest with it. I don't know, Ayumi-chan. It hurts so much. The way she talked to me, just like the villagers, he said inwardly while he desperately tried to get his loud sobs under control. He turned his body to look upwards, countless soft rain drops falling from the gray dull sky mixing with his salty tears as if purifying them. He felt so broken right now, he didn't know if he had the power to even get up now. Naruto-kun, please, don't hurt yourself like that. It pains me so much to see you like this, said Ayumi in a pleading voice, tears cascading down her beautiful face as she desperately wanted to get out there, hug him lovingly and never let him go. But she knew that the only one right now who could take care of Naruto would be Kushina, that is if she had recognized him by now. Naru-kun. Naruto's eyes widened when he again heard Kushina's soft but weak voice along with her sounds of panting. He sat up to look at her. She was barely standing while panting heavily, her knees trembling with extreme exhaustion, her long hair wet as they stuck to her wet appealing skin. But even with all that, he was surprised to see a glowing smile on her face, her eyes sparkling with unexplainable happiness and joy that he was hosting some moments ago. He would have blushed at the sight if not for the situation. Meanwhile, Kushina wasn't doing better when she took into account his wet figure and how handsome he looked while sitting there. Hence a dark red blush on her face which Naruto couldn't see as he had diverted his eyes from her. What do you want? Immediately after he said this, he was tackled by a red blur. The combined form sliding on the wet ground before both of them stopped. Feeling her curves on his chest, he would have blushed if wasn't so confused by her happy teary face expression. Wah! Again he was interrupted when Kushina hugged him extremely tightly. My Sochi, my Naru-kun, you're alive. I'm sorry for the way I acted before. I was only being cautious. I love you so much. I love you, I love you, I love you Datbane. She spoke as fast as she could, only stopping to take in the necessary oxygen, her arms tightly encircled around his neck. Naruto almost gagged when she suddenly hugged him, but the words she spoke completely made his heart leap with joy. He didn't know if he was right, but he felt something more in those words than there should be. Like she meant something else, something maybe even she was not aware of. Kushina lifted her face to gaze into his mesmerizing oceanic blue eyes, almost getting lost in them. Her face like that of a shining sun coming fresh out of the clouds, while her trembling hand slowly made its way onto his whiskered cheek. Why you really mean that? He asked in a choked voice, a hopeful look on his face while strands of long red hair fell on his face. Kushina nodded furiously while caressing his cheeks softly, making him blush while a light blush itself refused to leave her face. She couldn't explain it, but seeing him this happy and his full-blown smile made her heart flutter while butterflies seemed to form in her stomach. Of course, Ebane. I love you more than anything or anyone I've ever loved. You're my bundle of joy and happiness. I would never ever leave you. Why you? You don't know how much I've waited for this day. My baby, she squealed before again hugging him to her chest, making him blush furiously. Both of them oblivious to the rain that continued to fall on their combined form. Lime warning. For the first time in his life, Naruto didn't resist something which could be considered as perverted. Her wet silky gown, almost making him feel her skin, made blood trickle down his nose while his face was squished in her plump, curvaceous, luscious and utterly delicious D-cups. He could feel her cold, hardened nipples poking his cheek, making his breathing somewhat labored. Meanwhile Kushina too wasn't faring much better. She almost moaned in pleasure when she felt his nose poking in between her breasts while there was a huge blush on her face, her heart starting to beating faster. What's wrong with me? He's my son. I shouldn't feel like this. But it feels so good, she thought as an involuntary shudder passed through her wet and cold body. But she couldn't stop the moan from escaping her throat when one of her nipples accidentally brushed against his cheek, sending jolts of electric pleasure throughout her body, making her breathing heavier. Meanwhile Naruto wasn't in control right now. This was the first time he had felt a female's body, and a hot one at that. Thus he found himself extremely turned on when he heard her soft moan while he could feel the blood rush to the lower parts of his body. His instincts taking over while his brain couldn't register what was going on rationally. He didn't have an idea why, but he had never had an urge so strong to touch a female's body. The same was happening with the fiery red head. Kushina pushed Naruto's head into her breasts as tightly as she could as another moan escaped her pink lips when her nipples again brushed against his whiskered cheeks, both of them breathing heavily, feeling warm despite the cold raindrops that were descending on their combined forms. This isn't right. What am I doing? Ayumi-chan. What's going on? Wow, her breasts are so soft, firm and squishy, he said inwardly, a huge blush on his face before he heard perverted giggling inside his head. Hee. Enjoy Naruto-kun, said Ayumi huskily, making his eyes widen. This is your doing, isn't it? He asked, but didn't got any reply except that same giggling he's seen his pervert of a sensei do countless of times. He was brought out of his inner conversation when he again heard a soft moan escape Kushina's lips as she started to straddle her hips against his hardened member, sending shivers down both of their spines, making Naruto groan, wanting to get more pleasure as he too started to move his lower body in rhythm with her. She tightened her grip on his flakes of blonde hair while there was a pink tint on her cheeks. Hearing him groan in pleasure, her breathing became heavier while her mind was in a haze as she couldn't think properly anymore. It was as if something was affecting her before her eyes widened in realization. It's Ayumi-chan. She's releasing those damn pheromones again. I have to stop this. What if Naruto-kun hates me after this? She thought before she moaned in pleasure despite her thoughts, her body itself responding to the pheromones in air while her hips just couldn't stop moving despite her will. Naruto-kun. Stop this. Yes, and no, we can't do this, she said while breathing heavily, her lower region now dripping wet with juices. Even though she was saying this, but actually she was the one who was doing everything while Naruto was just lost in the immense pleasure he was feeling whenever she rubbed her lower region with his stiffened member. His hand clutching strands of grass tightly, his eyes closed in pleasure as he tried to resist it, stop his mother, but it was like his body wasn't responding to the mental signals anymore. He himself didn't know when he lifted his hand off the grass before it settled on her left plump mound. Kushina's breathing hitched in her throat while her eyes widened in surprise when she felt Naruto fondling her breast, a loud moan escaping her throat while her heart was pounding against her chest just like Naruto's. Naruto-kun. Yes, right there, squeeze it, as hard as you can, she moaned while panting, the pheromones being released by Ayumi doubling their pleasure and pulling their mind far away from logical reasoning. Ka-san. Stop. Desperately tried Naruto to stop himself or Kushina, but it seemed that she didn't hear him as she started to rub their lower regions with each other fastly, her thin hospital gown doing nothing to help. He opened his eyes and immediately his mouth went dry as he watched her wet, hardened and enticing pink nipple through her loose gown, the small water drops on her skin making him breath more heavily while his member throbbed painfully in his shinobi pants, his hand on automatic transmission as it continued to give attention to her left breast. Naruto-kun. My nipples. Suck them. Bite them. Hurry, said Kushina in between her moans as she pushed her mounds more onto his face. I knew she was the forward type. That's what I like about you, Kushi-chan, thought Ayumi as she wiped the trickle of blood, her cheeks having a pink on them while her tails waved behind her madly in excitement, her lower region dripping wet from seeing and hearing their interactions. Lime end. Just as his body on automation was about to comply to Kushina's request, lightning struck a nearby tree with a thunderous sound, making it catch fire, nearly making them jump in their positions, but effectively clamping their growing out of control lust for now, while Kushina whimpered cutely at loss of contact of her breasts with Naruto's hand. Realizing what they were doing, Kushina, using the last bit of her strength, pushed herself up before sitting on the wet green grass besides Naruto, a huge blush on her face as she gazed sideways with a cute expression. Naruto himself immediately stood up, his eyes widened with a blush as deep as Kushina's on his cheek, but his hormones still in effect had made him a little weak on his knees, combined with his foot slipping on the wet slippery grass made him fall towards the sitting, erotic and a wet form of Kushina. She squeaked when both of them fell on the grass, Naruto on top of Kushina, rain still pouring down heavily. They both blushed furiously, Naruto because of the feeling of her warm bust pushed against his chest, while Kushina because her breasts were sensitive, making her feel good when his warm muscled chest rubbed against her hardened nipples, due to a mixture of cold and pleasure. Their eyes met for a brief second, her deep violet eyes meeting his oceanic blue, before they jerked their heads sideways in opposite directions, cute blushes on both of their faces, while Kushina's red hair was sprawled on the grassy training ground, which was rare itself in Konoha. Slowly, Naruto got off her as he went to sit beside her, while Kushina frowned a bit at the lack of contact. It was like he made her full whenever they touched. But she was his mother, it was wrong, wasn't it? But then, why was she feeling like this about her own son? What if he hated her now? What if he thought that she was a freak? What if he didn't want to be anywhere near her from now on? It almost broke her heart to even think about it. Meanwhile, these were the same thoughts that were flooding Naruto's mind. Not wanting to lose him, she sat up abruptly, surprising Naruto before grabbing his wet but warm hand in both of her soft and cold hands. Naru-kun, I'm extremely sorry, please don't leave me. I don't know what happened, Datbane, she pleaded with a quivering tone while her lower lip trembled, her eyes wet while her hands trembled around his hand. A shocked Naruto looked into her violet eyes, his heart encased in warmth at hearing that she too didn't want him to leave her. He slowly put his firm hand on her trembling hands, squeezing them as if reassuring her. Bending down, he kissed her soft and creamy wet hands, making her blush before his famous foxy grin settled on his face, making her heart pound faster, her blush deepening while again there was that feeling of butterflies dancing around in her stomach. I'll never leave you, Ka-san. That's a promise of a lifetime, Datbeo, he said, making Kushina's heart swell with joy, her eyes sparkling with tears of happiness before she lunged at him like a baby kitsune does at its object of affection, making Ayumi proud. Naruto accepted her with open arms as she rubbed her cheek fondly against his chest while he rubbed her back softly. Ms. Sochi, I love you so much. I will never leave you again. I promise, she cried onto his chest as she remembered the events of horrible night which she had experienced a few minutes ago. Meanwhile, Naruto's nose started to twitch before he, sneezed, catching cold because of the cold rain. Kushina giggled at his cute face that followed the sneeze before she cupped his whispered cheek lovingly, the touch meaning much more than what a mother's touch should be. Naru-kun, you'll catch a cold if you stay out here in the cold rain, she chided with a smile while softly pinching his whiskered cheeks, making Naruto pout. But what about you? You'll catch a cold too, he said with a scrunched up face as he tried to hold the second sneeze while Kushina snorted, her arms still wrapped around his torso. It would be a million years before your Ka-san catches a koaku, she said before sneezing cutely as Naruto hugged her more tightly while trying to hold in his laughter before he broke into fits of it. Kushina blushed in embarrassment before pouting cutely at him, making Naruto want to kiss her into the oblivion. He blushed at that thought while his laughing slowly subsided before he kissed her on the cheek. You're so cute, Ka-san, he said with a pink tint on his cheeks, a sheepish smile on his face while Kushina was blushing furiously before she released him from the hug and turned into the opposite direction to hide her blush. Shish Shutup, don't try to embarrass me, Datbane, she said while holding her pink tinted cheeks before she shivered from the cold. Well, they're already acting more of a couple than a mother and son, thought Ayumi with an amused smirk, but it's good to see you again, Kushi-chan. I missed you, thought the strongest Biju as a sad smile came upon her face while Naruto covered Kushina with his trenchcoat, the rain still pouring as heavily as ever. Ka-san, where should we go now? I can't take you back to the village right now considering your weakness, and besides we have to also report to Hokage-sama about you. We can't have you treated at Konoha's hospital right now, there are so many things unexplained, he said while Kushina nodded weakly. There's a hideout not far away from here, we can spend some time with each other before announcing my arrival, she said before blushing at what she said. Why am I feeling this way? Naru-kun, there's something in you that even Minato couldn't hope to have, she thought with a small smile, before squeaking when Naruto suddenly picked her bridal style. Now, those who knew her would have trouble picking up their jaws right now if they heard her squeak, cause she was typically known as a fiery kunoichi. Nobody had seen her soft side except few people like Uzumaki Mito and the Four Ice Queens. Even Minato rarely saw this side of her, considering he was the fourth Hokage and the apprentice of Jiraiya, she usually stayed strong in his presence and never let herself be wavered. But in front of Naruto, she felt like she could be herself all the time. She kind of felt secure in his presence. You're my knight, aren't you, Naru-kun? She thought with a giggle while Naruto looked at her awkwardly before dashing towards the hideout Kushina had pointed at. Konoha's forest 1 mile north of Hokage's monument hideout. At the center of a well-hidden clearing, Naruto saw a moderate-sized wooden compound with a typical sliding door on an elevated platform. Strangely, there was no smell of rotten wood and the wood looked fresh even under the rain. Giggling at his confused face, Kushina replied. Fuinjutas Naru-kun, she said while Naruto's eyes widened when he remembered that the one he was holding was a seal master on a whole other level, that even Jiraiya didn't compare to. Kushina saw his eyes sparkle the same way hers was sparkling when she saw Uzumaki Mito write a complicated seal in midair with her chakra alone. Ka-san, you are a seal master, right? Can you please teach me? Please it Bayo. He pleaded with barely contained excitement while Kushina blinked at his energetic pleading. Of course, I'll teach you everything that I know, she said with a smile before, yeah, Naruto hurled her into the midair in his moment of skyrocketing excitement. Hya! Kushina screamed at the sudden movement before Naruto caught her, a sheepish grin on her face while Kushina glared at him playfully before he muttered, sorry. Putting her down delicately on her request, he watched as she put her palm in midair, channeling chakra through her hand, and to his amazement a complex light blue-colored seal formed in midair with just her chakra while he could see a transparent barrier now somewhat visible. Quietly activating his rinnegan, he was quite shocked to see her chakra of sky blue color, lighter shade than that of normal blue chakra before his eyes turned back to normal. And there's also that matter of Sharingan, which I presume that even she doesn't know about, he thought while observing her with bated breath. Memory Yugami no Shunshin no Barrier. Kai. Memory distortion teleportation barrier. Released, she said after going through a couple of hand seals before slamming her hand on the empty circle, surrounding which were a pattern of intricate seals in concentric circles expanding outwards. 4 lines of black-colored seals perpendicular to each other came expanding outwards, just like in summoning technique, before the barrier slowly dissipated until only the circle containing seals was left, which was currently rotating slowly around its center while Kushina signaled him to follow her. Once inside the barrier, she motioned Naruto to come near the seal. Ka-san, what does this seal do? He asked curiously. This is one of the many seals that I created. When this barrier is active, anyone who touches it is transported to the Shodime's head while the memory of this location is wiped out from his mind. Thus the name of memory distortion teleportation barrier, she explained with a hint of pride in her voice while Naruto watched her in admiration. That's so cool, he said with shining eyes while Kushina puffed her chest in pride, making Naruto blush. Fuck ninjutsu, grab fuinjutsu, he thought as he watched the seals in wonder. Naru-kun, put your palm on this empty circle like I did and channel your chakra through it, she said while signaling towards the rotating circle. Seeing as he trusted her with closed eyes, he put his hand on the empty space. Expecting his hand to just go through, he was surprised when he felt something invisible touch his hands while Kushina watched his gaping expression with an amusing smile. Naruto channeled his chakra through the seal, and much to Kushina's shock, it started to glow white and before it settled back to its original black color. What the fuck? She thought with her widened eyes as she saw Naruto studying the seal like a child in the midst of a candy store. Naru-kun, what was that? Your chakra, white? She asked as his surprise slowly turned into confusion while Naruto grinned cheekily at her. What? If you can have special chakra, then why can't I? He said before gazing at the hideout. Kushina narrowed her eyes at him. Although she had missed his 13 years, she wanted to know everything that had happened up until now. Uzumaki Naruto, she said as he jerked his head back in surprise to look towards her before he gulped nervously seeing her serious expression. The aura was the same as that she was radiating when she was being cautious of him. You're going to answer me everything that I ask, every single one of it. If you think you can hide anything from me, then you'll know why was I considered an equal of the Yondaime Hokage and was known throughout the elemental countries, she said in her threatening tone while Naruto nodded furiously, but felt warmth flow through his body at her protective nature. Good then, she said with a smile making Naruto's heart beat faster at that angelic smile, a small blush on his face. Ah, is my Naru-chan blushing? If you have a crush on your mother, you can just tell me so. Nay, she said with a teasing tone before Naruto sputtered incoherently, a furious blush on his face. So you want to play like that, huh? Your days as a prankmaster are over, Ka-san, he thought with a challenging look before he retorted. Oh, who wouldn't have a crush on you considering the way you were moaning, he said with an oh-so-innocent look making Kushina remember that scene, a dark red blush on her face while blood trickled down her nose. Who said I was moaning, she yelled while wiping the blood furiously before Naruto tilted his head in a thinking pose. Oh, so those were cries of pleasure. Yep, I knew it, he said while nodding to himself whereas Kushina opened her mouth, closed it then again opened it but couldn't find anything to come back, her face as red as tomato. Who knew my Ka-san was a closet pervert, he thought with a sweat drop. Oh, I knew Naruto-kun, said Ayumi while Naruto's eyebrows twitched at hearing her innocent voice. And you're probably the biggest pervert on this planet. What do you think you were doing there? And what did you even do exactly? He shouted in his head making Ayumi cover her sensitive ears before she replied. Ah, hee. Well, I released some pheromones to help you get comfortable with Kushi-chan. And don't you dare deny it, I know you had a crush on her from the moment you saw her and from way she's been acting, she more than likely likes you too, said Ayumi while Naruto again blushed. But she's my mother, he thought inwardly before she snorted. Oh shoot, I don't care if she's your mother or your sister, the fact that she's a woman and you like her and that she most probably likes you is enough for me. Remember, love crosses all boundaries, she said while Naruto blinked. But, do I even love her that way? It's so soon, he said to her inwardly. Maybe not now, but most probably you'll fall for her in the future and vice versa, she said while Naruto couldn't help but strangely feel happy at those words. Naruto. Naruto zoomed back to reality when he heard his mother's serious voice, show me your seal. Naruto looked at her in confusion before he realized that she was the one who had designed the seal. But, why? He asked before she replied. I want to see your memories up until now, I can't wait any longer. I know they probably wouldn't be pleasant considering that several other Anbu were with the old monkey that night who had watched Minato seal Ayumi-chan into you, so they probably would have spread that news to the whole village, she said with clenched fists as she prepared herself for the nightmare that was Naruto's life. But, how is watching my memories related to the seal, he asked. I designed the seal in such a way that it is connected to your brain. For example, whenever you're angry or high on emotions, the seal automatically leaks some yuki into your chakra coils. Thus I can use the seal as a pathway to access your memories, she said while Naruto looked at her in wonder. He really now was eager to learn Fuinjutsu. Kushina's vision slowly started to become hazy as her weakness was taking a toll on her even with the Uzumaki regeneration. She was about to fall when suddenly she found herself in Naruto's arms. You should rest inside now, Ka-san, you can watch my memories later. Besides, it isn't like they are pleasant, he said with sad eyes while Kushina just smiled at him with half-lidded eyes before cupping his cheeks lovingly. But, they are my Naru-kun's memories, she said before closing her eyes while snuggling into his chest. Naruto smiled at her while clearing a strand of her wet hair from her face before kissing her forehead. A small smile formed on Kushina's face before she snuggled deeply into his warm chest while Naruto took her bridal style into the wooden compound. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed the video, be sure to like, comment and subscribe, as well as checking out the author on fanfiction.net.